This episode is such a treat. I just have to come on and tell you that before we get started with this conversation. I just finished recording this podcast with Shula, and it has been so illuminating. Some of you know, I've been through my own North Node return journey over the last couple of years, which has specifically been around money and receiving and all of the drama that tends to come up around that involving relationships, involving all these things. And I was really keen to get in someone onto the podcast who, is really has this incredible expertise around money. And so I can't wait for you to enjoy this conversation that we have. I share a little bit more about my experience and what triggered it all and how I started to bring myself back to center. I think for anyone who's experienced any kind of money trauma in their business, investing trauma in their business, anything, this episode is going to be so juicy and so supportive to you. It may even bring a tear to your eye because there are some wonderful gems that Shula dropped for us on how you can bring yourself back, ground yourself deeper in with working through it through and with your money drama. So I can't wait for you to enjoy this. Make sure you got your notepads out. This is going to be a good one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Business Podcast. I am so excited for our very special guest and the conversation that we're about to have in the virtual studio today. We are focusing on money, and there's no better time to focus on this than Taurus season. And so I just feel that this is a conversation that needs to be had from a person who has so much expertise and experience in this area. If you have ever, felt like you have any drama whatsoever about money, about pricing, about anything in your business or career, listen up, get your notepad ready. Welcome to Shulamit. I'm so excited that you are here with us. I can't wait to introduce you, but I just want to say a quick welcome before I do.
Hey, hello.
Yay! I'm so excited that you're here. This is going to be a great podcast. I can feel it already. So, Shulamit Ber Levtov is the entrepreneur's therapist. I'm so excited to have her here today. She is a cultural change catalyst, speaking and educating at the intersection of mental health and entrepreneurship. She works with women business owners to preserve their peace of mind, thank God, as they ride the emotional roller coaster of running a business. Shulamit has been an entrepreneur for over 30 years and has more than 24 years of professional experience applying therapeutic, coaching, and somatic tools to support women's mental health and personal growth. She speaks and teaches about the intersection of mental health, trauma, financial psychology, and entrepreneurship locally, nationally, and internationally. As an award-winning entrepreneur, master's level licensed trauma therapist and trauma survivor with the certifications in the trauma of money, financial social work, nonviolent communication, and yoga, Shula brings a unique perspective and approach to supporting women in business. Okay, that is just such a dynamite bio. And I just know that people are going to be so inspired not only by your example, but also the wisdom that you have to share. So I guess our
Great.
first question kind of has to be, what led you to become the entrepreneur's therapist? How did you get started?
Sure. Well, I didn't obviously start working with entrepreneurs. And in fact, I didn't start life at my professional life as a therapist.
Yeah.
I went to school late, graduated before I was 50. And then because this business needed to be sustainable for me, coming into it at 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
I jumped right into business training
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately had a holistic clinic, a group practice that was flourishing. It was doing really well in the community where it was, and it was a brick and mortar.
Mm.
And then in August 2020, completely unrelated to COVID, the stresses of running a business, of being a solo business owner, which I'm sure everyone listening can relate to, because
Yes.
you're wearing all the hats and doing all the things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everything just came to a head for me. And how that showed up is that I spoke to a team member who had made a mistake. Instead of speaking to them privately, I spoke to them in front of the team, which is
Mm-hmm.
such poor leadership and so harmful interpersonally. And I also bit my beloved's head off her something stupid. I don't even remember what, but it was like, who, you didn't take the garbage out, which is dumb because we don't even, that's not even how we do things. That just shows you how off the rails I was.
Mm.
So I'm talking to my own therapist and telling him like, oh, these people, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, you're right to be upset about this, but let's take a look at how you're behaving.
Mm.
And I went, oh, is this a, can I swear?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was like, oh shit. And his recommendation was that I take a stress leave, that I was, the stress of running a business was too much for me and I needed time out. But what I came to realize when I started thinking about this was what I actually needed to do was exit the business.
Mm.
And so I did. The business is still running, it's still flourishing, but I'm no longer associated with it. And then I did take a month of stress leave. And during this time, I was considering, okay, I'm going back to solo practice. What am I going to do? And I took into consideration my own experience with mental health as a therapist and a business owner. And also being the lone therapist in entrepreneurial spaces, other people, other business owners would whisper to me about their own difficulties. And
Mm.
this is a thing, as business owners, we don't really talk to others about because we fear that if we share our vulnerability, it will undermine people's confidence in us and our business, right?
Oh, 100%.
So
There's so
I
much
really was
pain.
privileged
Hmm.
to hear from these folks. And I realized as I put this all together that there's a gap in the market, that we need therapists who understand not only the impact of entrepreneurship on mental health, but also the context of entrepreneurship and what will work for entrepreneurs to care for their mental health. And that's how the Entrepreneur's Therapist was born.
Oh, wow. I love that. You're so right. I think that there is an absolute gap there. It's like we know how to coach ourselves, potentially, we know how to look at some of the mindset work, but what you're talking about brings in so many other aspects, right? Looking at our
Mm.
patterns, looking at our trauma, and understanding how we're dealing with the intensive stresses. I have, I would love to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that knowing the stresses, knowing the specifics, which we'll get into, the specific mental health, I don't know if you want to call it challenges or mental health,
Mhm.
whatever stressors that can come in. Do you think that anyone can be an entrepreneur, or do you think it's a specific kind of person? I'm so curious to hear your answer on that.
Well, in the research on entrepreneurship, it identifies two kinds of entrepreneurs:
Oh.
entrepreneurs of necessity and entrepreneurs who decide that that's what they want to do with their life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so another element is that the majority of businesses in the US and Canada, I'm not sure how it falls out for Europe,
Mm.
are small and medium-sized businesses with like 10 or under, I think it's 10 or under employees. And the majority of those are women run.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I understand the research, the majority of women run businesses, these women business owners are entrepreneurs of necessity
Wow, that's so
because we
interesting.
need
Yeah.
employment that accommodates our needs. Either we have accessibility needs around our physical and emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
We have needs around parenting. We have needs around work that's organized to fit our lives or our capacity or our ability. We can contribute so much to the world, but the 9 to 5 just doesn't work for us.
Mm.
So there's that aspect of, can anyone be an entrepreneur? I think there are many women who are entrepreneurs of necessity who aren't necessarily born entrepreneurial, but become so because of whatever need there is in their environment that they need to respond to through developing their own way of earning money.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another interesting element that Dr. Michael A. Freeman, who's a psychiatrist and psychologist in the US, I call him the grandfather of research into entrepreneurship and mental health. He notices that there's a pattern of dopaminergic neurodiversity that influences people's journeys into entrepreneurship. And the way
Aha.
he looks at it, so for example, dopaminergic includes ADHD, ADD, but also bipolar disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And so his research has demonstrated that there's a range of expression of this particular kind of neurodiversity that on the one end is full-blown mental illness, diagnosable, and very difficult circumstances for people. And then along the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, it's expressed in entrepreneurship.
Mm,
Because he found that entrepreneurs, if they didn't themselves already have a diagnosis, that they had an immediate family member who did.
wow.
So it's
Wow.
so interesting, all the factors at play that can contribute to somebody becoming an entrepreneur. So I do think it's possible that any person could come up with the idea that they want to earn their own money.
Mm-hmm.
And how that expresses itself in entrepreneurship, I think is very varied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh wow. What a great answer. I'm just like loving this. My mind is like pew pew pew. Um, I think that's really fascinating. I didn't know that statistic about, the necessity versus kind of chosen path of
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship specific to women. That is very interesting and makes so much sense as you
Yeah.
described it. But also understanding around the neurodivergent track to entrepreneurship. To me, that when you said it, it totally clicked and it made so much sense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting because my community and my clients, like, from readings all the way to my mentorship, absolute majority, I've never done a percentage or anything, but absolute majority have ADHD, autism, bipolar, all the things that you mentioned. And I thought maybe that's just because that's, the way our brains work, that's the people that I attract because I probably have an aspect of that as well. I'm not diagnosed or anything, but like manifesting generator, loves to do a variety of things, this and then this and then this and this, and so I just thought, oh, well, maybe that's just me. So it's really interesting hearing you share that's actually, across all entrepreneurship, it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a trend. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that in the data, and I think that that makes so much sense. Ooh, I love that. What an interesting thing to kind of chew on mentally. So, I really want to talk to you about a specific area of stress and drama
Yes. Yes.
in entrepreneurship, which is money. So you have developed something, I believe, called the trauma of money, or
No,
is the
actually,
specialty that
this,
you teach. Yeah.
yes, the Trauma of Money is a psychoeducational program that trains professionals
Mhm.
to work with the mental health aspect of money. The
Amazing.
the emotional, let's say the emotion, not the, because mental health, I mean, we're in the realm of diagnosis if we talk about it that way. So
Mm,
really, I would say that the emotional and psychological issues at play around trauma, which is like life trauma, but also trauma you might have experienced with money and how
mhm.
that affects your money behaviors and your money emotions. And so it was developed by a woman. Her name is Chantel Chapman. She's a
Okay.
Canadian woman. She's in BC.
Oh,
And there's a very diverse faculty of folks from all around the world who teach in the program. I'm on the faculty as well.
oh,
So
fantastic.
you can learn that the trauma of money is not mine.
Okay.
It's developed by this faculty led by Chantel.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you for clarifying. Can you
Yeah.
tell us more about the trauma of money and maybe
Yeah.
get into some of like what specific areas you look at? What are the causes of financial and money trauma? Let's get into the
Sure.
weeds a little
Yeah.
bit at the
Yeah.
end.
So the trauma that comes to play around money, there are two aspects to it. Any kind of trauma that you've experienced in your life. And I will say, I'm talking about this in terms of small T trauma as opposed to big T.
Right.
So big T, we distinguish like earthquake, car accident, the kind of classical trauma one-off events. But then
Hmm.
there are small T traumas like being bullied at school.
Hmm.
Um, a medical trauma, like a little kid who goes to the dentist. Of course, it's a proper health care, but that can be traumatizing to a child's nervous system, right? So I want to really expand the idea around what trauma is.
Hmm.
And we can have experienced many kind of things that are shocks to our nervous system that make us go, no, on a nervous system level. And those can come to play in how we see the world, how we think about ourselves, and then also how we think about money.
Hmm.
Then we can have traumas directly related to money. For example, growing up under scarcity with lack of love, lack of belonging, fear around food, like food scarcity, money scarcity, poverty, all those kinds of things. You can, as an entrepreneur, have experienced bankruptcy. You might have been in an abusive relationship. And if that's the case, 90 some percent of women who have been in an abusive relationship with a man have experienced also financial abuse. So it comes in two ways,
Mm,
the trauma around money.
mm,
And then there's kind of a third aspect. So these two, life trauma and money trauma, affect how you relate to money. And then there's the aspect of living under capitalism
mm.
that is just traumatizing anyway.
Yeah.
And if
Let's
you've ever
talk about
seen the
that.
wheel of power and privilege, the
Mhm,
further away you are from the center of privilege, the more traumatizing it is to live under capitalism.
mhm,
So if you're a woman of color, a woman who has a disability, a woman who has a mental health challenge,
mhm,
a woman whose first language is not English, the more you get away from the center of privilege, the more intersecting systems of oppression come to bear in you, and the more traumatizing it is for you to live under capitalism,
right.
where money is a proxy for worth and safety.
Mhm,
And daily under capitalism, through money or otherwise, our worth and safety is constantly put at risk.
mm. Thank you for
So,
like speaking to that just for a moment because
yeah, yeah,
I think, there's such an amazing societal conversation, debate, whatever you want to talk about right now about, capitalism and then what's the alternative and things like that. And we don't necessarily, that's not what our conversation is exactly about, but it's so important
related.
it's so related. It's so important to acknowledge the bigger systems that we live in. And I think a lot of us, I just want to say, a lot of people in the coaching industry or who have hired coaches or went through the big, 2018 to 2020 coaching
Yes,
goal, like we may feel like I think there are a lot of people out there that feel like they've been a bit gaslit about this,
yes.
and just like, no, like, don't even worry about the systems. Don't even worry about the concept of privilege. Like, that's not
Just
a
do
real
your
thing. That
thing.
doesn't
Yeah,
exist, and I think there's been a lot in the spiritual community and the spiritual coaching community of kind of ignoring the reality of our day-to-day lives. And I think it's wonderful that we're having this conversation, that's going to come out to people in Taurus season, because Taurus is like this reminder, and we've had Uranus in Taurus for 7 years. It's this reminder of like, yeah, but we also live in a body and we're also in
yes,
reality, and there is a reality
yes,
that we're collectively experiencing, and like we need to deal with that too. We can't
yes,
like, zoom out and just live in the 5D or like whatever. And so I really appreciate you bringing in this conversation as well, just about capitalism. So thank you.
yes.
Let me say
You're
that.
welcome. So, even if you've never experienced direct money trauma or other trauma in your life,
Yeah.
you can experience the impact of what we might call the trauma of scarcity
Hmm.
because you're living in a system that has an economic system based on the creation of scarcity and influencing people's decision making under scarcity and using tactics of scarcity.
Mm.
So we see this, we're exposed to this all the time in just general marketing. You watch a commercial that's using all the psychological tricks of scarcity to
Mhm.
manipulate you into making a decision, knowing that the human vulnerabilities. This is where PR and then marketing arose out of Freud's work and his understanding of human vulnerabilities.
Mm.
So like the exploitation, even when you're working for yourself, there's still extractive and exploitive messaging. You are viewed in capitalism as a resource to be exploited until you die, and they don't care if it kills. It's like the symbiotic relationship between the parasite and the host. The parasite doesn't care if the host dies. It
No,
has
because
no
they'll
care,
move
right?
on to another host,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so I want to say, as a therapist for entrepreneurs, I'm all about the monies. I'm all about all of us having money, money, money,
Yes.
because money is power.
Yeah.
And when we have power, we can change how things work.
Hmm.
And like Gandhi taught in nonviolent resistance, that we need to have two aspects of our resistance. We need to have a constructive program and a destructive program. And what we've missed in the current approach to social justice is we're doing a lot of destructive programs, demonstrating and things like that. But when you're attempting to destroy the current system
Mhm.
if there's not already a functioning system so that when the void occurs, people can move right away to this new way,
Yes.
right? You're missing half of the program of nonviolent resistance. And so for me, doing business and supporting people in doing business in non-capitalist ways is creating, as in the famous word of Gandhi, the world we want to see. We be the change we want to see in the world.
Mhm.
And the purpose of that is so that there's something to turn to when capitalism falls.
Oh, yes. This is such a great point to make because I've seen a lot of people, like when I first started in my business. So I didn't start as a coach. I want to give a little context. So I started in wellness events and I was
Mm.
working with mostly yoga teachers or people in corporate who wanted to be able to self-sustain in their business, or who wanted to move out of yoga and expand. And so I was helping them to do different, a variety of different events. And I was the host of the event, and then they were the talent. And I noticed this huge pattern of like major drama around money and not wanting to charge and feeling that their spiritual gifts shouldn't, like, money's dirty and like we shouldn't exchange that and all that. And we still have, I feel, not fully figured it out, although you probably have some solutions for us, which I would love to hear. But I still have conversations with people like, oh, how can we do like the collective gifting circle, right? There's so many different ways that people are trying to
So
solve
many different ways.
the problem, but it's not always solving the problem. And so I love that. I feel like you're giving us, even with just this discussion, like a sense of hope that we can be abundant, we can be well paid without feeling like, I don't know, some kind of money guilt. Do you see that a lot as one of the things that holds people back, or it creates a lot of drama with money, this kind of guilt or this feeling that money is bad, or like I don't want to charge people. I should give my gifts for free. I think that's a huge
Yeah.
thing in
Yeah.
our.
So where I'll start with that is
Mhm.
Coast Capital is a financial institution it's a credit union in BC, British Columbia,
Okay.
Canada. And they did research into money shame.
Oh, yeah.
And they discovered that 1/3 of Canadians experience money shame.
Mm.
But when I do trauma of money workshops, I do a poll an anonymous poll at the beginning of every workshop. And my question is, have you ever experienced shame about money? And it's always over 90% in every workshop that I give. So Coast Capital, their data is representative of the population they surveyed.
Mhm.
But I think it's underreported with their data. I'll give you the link to the study. It's actually very
Yes.
interesting. We can put the in the show notes for
Yeah.
people to look at.
Mhm.
But coming back to the tie between capitalism, if your worth is constantly under assault, then I am not worthy leads to feelings of shame and worthlessness
Yes.
about your innate value as a human,
Yes, yes.
right?
Oh, I was experiencing this in I had like something happened to me in 2023, and it kind of was this like culmination of events that led to this like spiral down of confidence in myself. And my
Yes.
business had been doing great. I just had my best year ever. I was so close to making my first six-figure year, all this stuff, having my biggest months. And then I invested, and I know we're going to talk about investment as well, but I invested in a mastermind that ended up to just be, like, what do they call it? Where it's like it looks shiny on the outside, but there's nothing on the inside.
What? That's so disappointing.
Yeah, and then that knocked my confidence because I turned it back
Yes.
on me, and that money shame absolutely led to this, kind of year and a half, kind of corresponding with my nodal return, major challenges with money, with, showing up, with feeling confident in myself. And I
Yeah.
thought I was good, so like I know this can happen to anyone, and I'm coming out of it now. And just the abundance in my life, I had to make some really difficult decisions in my personal
Mhm.
life, but ultimately I am so much more confident and strong now that I've come out of this. But I just know that the shame is, and worthiness, like that's what it was for me, and I know that's what it
Yeah.
was for, and that's what it is for so many
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we already have this whole shame thing,
Mhm.
then it's really hard to think clearly because the first shame dysregulates the body. Shame registers like a threat to the organism, to the nervous system, to the mind, to the soul, to the spirit, And so your first reaction when you feel like you're under threat is, fight, flight, freeze, fawn,
Mhm.
right? The nervous system responses that are very directed towards in the moment survival.
Yes, mine's always freeze. That's
Yeah,
mine. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
oh no, like maybe I'll just do nothing then, and I
yeah,
won't do
yeah,
my stuff, or I
yeah.
won't. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And I have to say, coming back to the trauma research, first of all, it's kind of misleading the fight, flight, freeze, fawn when we think about direct threats, because the vast majority of people either freeze or fawn.
Hmm.
Fawning is like people pleasing, right? It's
Yeah, that would be
appeasing the,
mine. Freeze and fawn. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Libra,
And
right? And so many of us have experienced the South Node Libra stuff going on. Like we're all trying to be like, okay, let's heal the fawning. Let's heal the yeah,
yeah,
people pleasing. Hmm.
yeah. And so when you're in a dysregulated state, when you're experiencing threat, the brain, whose sole job is directing energy towards survival, is of course fully engaged in surviving. And you can't think clearly, you can't take new information in, you can't focus and make decisions, you can't synthesize information and make sense out of it. And in fact, shame makes you want to hide.
Yes, yes,
And
exactly
the
what happened.
antidote to shame is belonging,
Yes, yes.
right?
Hmm.
But when you're in a shame response, you can't even ask for help
Right. Yes.
because you're feeling so vulnerable.
You're just
So
like,
how
well,
this,
it's my fault. I've got to deal with it or
something's the matter with
disappear.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something mattered with me. Yeah, and it wasn't
yeah,
until that's exactly how it was for me. And I'm just want to articulate a little bit of my story so that people
yeah.
can know they're not alone in this as well, right? It's like as soon as I started, I reached out and realized, you know what? Actually, I think I need to try therapy. Like, and I reached out. I had
Yeah.
the most amazing therapist ever. Shout out to Samantha if you ever hear this. She was incredible. But yeah, I started to realize, oh, it's my firstborn daughter, child of immigrants. I'm the problem. I have to be the solution. It's all on me thing that was stopping me from seeking support. So, like, my friends didn't know, like, I kind of started isolating myself. Like, no one knew what was going on with me. Some people could sense it because I wasn't online as
Right.
much,
Yeah.
but yeah, as soon as I started realizing that and then I started opening up more, then as you say, like, you get that sense of connection, belonging, like you matter, all that good stuff. Oh, so healing. Yeah.
Yes. And this is what I would say first and foremost, as in terms of recovering from your money stuff,
Mhm.
is finding not even money related, just finding safe communities play or safe friends
Yes.
and begin the journey of becoming vulnerable and developing a sense of safety and connection with somebody. Because when you have that, then you can take risks, which is what it feels like to talk about money.
Yeah.
So like, the shit hits the fan in your money life and you have to all of a sudden like reach out and create connection and take the risk of being like, no, it's really hard to do, right? So in general for mental health and in particular for your money stuff, it's so important to have a team and a bunch of supports in place because we are stronger with support. And
Mhm.
this is the nature of resilience. It's not an innate human characteristic. It's a set of skills that can be developed.
Mhm.
And the heart of resilience lies in being resourced. And so when you set yourself up with the resource base and the team and the network of support, you are inherently stronger because of that support. So when the crap hits the fan, mental health wise or money wise or even personal life wise, you are supported by this network that you've put in place to begin with, right?
Mhm.
So you've got somebody you can reach out to and you can say to that person. And so I met a colleague in the trauma of money, and we have talked every day, many times a day since we were in the training, specifically about money and especially about our money shame.
Mhm.
And so we talk by voice note and we'll say to each other, so I'm feeling shame about something that happened with my money today. And I'm just gonna name it and put it here. And
Mhm.
the other person goes, of course that would be hard. Of course you're feeling this way. This is a very tender and vulnerable. It
Mhm.
makes sense that you would feel the way you're feeling. And, like acknowledging and validating.
Yes.
which creates a sense of safety and belonging so that then we can begin to go, okay, what actually happened here? What am I going to do about this? Is there
Mhm.
something I need to put in place so that this doesn't happen again? Right? We can look out of the tunnel of scarcity
Mhm.
and into the more abundant world that is a like that, but it takes the wider view. And first we need to care for and attend to the shame and the emotions
Mhm.
before we can actually look into this world of abundance. But I do want to say with scarcity and abundance, that whole thing, that when you're quote unquote in scarcity, which parenthetically is a survival based psychology, so it isn't a mindset. It isn't the way you think. It isn't just changing your thoughts to abundance.
Yes.
It's actually your innate survival mechanisms that come to play. And that's why I call it scarcity psychology and not scarcity mindset,
Oh,
because
I love
it
that.
truly is your own inner survival mechanisms at play that lead you to behave in a number of ways to try and address the survival stuff. So I'll give you a link, two links actually,
Okay.
to blog posts that I've written about this so that people can look more into in depth about that. But coming back to the
Mhm.
idea of scarcity, abundance, and shame, how to come to the abundance in the experience of shame is to offer yourself the care.
Mm.
An abundant response to a scarcity experience is love.
Oh, yes.
That's the positive. People are like high vibes only, no negative thoughts. Life is life, right? We're in this skin suit in this world, and we experience worldly things like distress and difficulty.
Mhm.
And the positivity there is not to squelch those things, but in fact to turn toward them with love. That's positivity.
Mhm.
And that's abundance. And that's what's needed when you're in an experience of shame, is first acknowledging, oh, this is difficult. I'm in distress. I'm having a hard time. And then to say, right, well, of course I would. Like for me, for example, the story I tell about my whole like money shock and shame moment is on a Friday afternoon at the end of February in North America, where I live in the northern temperate climate. Friday in February is like bleak as F.
I bet.
It's cold, it's gray, it's dark, the days are short. You're like. And I go to do my bookkeeping and paying my team, and I turn on my bank. I log on to my bank website, and my line of credit has been frozen.
Oh.
And in
Mhm.
fact, it was closed. It turned out that it was entirely closed. And I like had this freak out moment of like, I've got this is still when I had the group practice, this wildly successful practice. But all of a sudden, here it was. I had no access to credit to run my business. And this is like the whole freak out moment of like, well, what am I going to do?
Mhm.
And so, in that moment, like it took me about an hour before I could like, because, it's a very direct threat, like the bear's in your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after about an hour of freaking out and like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm freaking out. Oh my God, this is a disaster. How am I even going to do this? I'm ruined. I'm going to have to close the business tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. I Something happened, thank God. Um, and I remembered I was 50 at the time, so also thank God, because if I was 20, who knows? But I remembered all the difficult things that I'd been through in my life:
Mhm.
sexual assault, domestic violence, poverty, all those things. And I realized, well, I'm 50, I'm not dead. I was able to survive all these things.
Mhm.
And so then I came to my presence of mind, like you said at the beginning before we got on my center.
Mhm. Mhm.
I came to my center, to my sense of myself and my capacity to survive. And then I was able to say to myself, oh, yes, I'm in distress. Of course I am. This is hard. This is scary. This is like next level scary, friend, you
Yep.
know? And it's okay. Of course, you would freak out because under scary conditions, that's what you do. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling the way you feel. And actually, once I was able to like regulate and care for the emotions, I was able to realize, well, yeah, actually, I've survived many, many, many things. Not that they turned out the way I wanted them to, not that they were the way I planned or that I liked how they went or any of that, but I survived. I was okay. So I connected with my capacity of being okay. And for me, in that situation of scarcity, that was the abundance. I went, oh, okay. And then I asked for help, right? Like the next thing I did was like F me, what am I going to do? I know who I'm going to call because I had already a network of friends. I had a bookkeeper, I had a coach, and these were all people who shared my values and helped me feel good about myself. I knew that if I reached out to them, they would be supportive.
Hmm.
So that's an example of turning scarcity into abundance. That is I would say, the mental health appropriate, growth oriented
Hmm.
way of responding
Hmm.
in a situation of scarcity and fear and moving into an experience of greater abundance.
Yes. Oh my gosh, amazing. There were so many mic drop moments in what you just shared. Thank you. And thank you for giving us the gift of that story as well. Because I know that so many people who are listening can probably identify with one of those, oh my God moments where they're like, I'm not okay, or like, this feels like the end of the world, and how you supported yourself through it was such a beautiful example. I wrote down the heart of resilience relies on being resourced. That
Yes.
can I get a t-shirt with that on it? Like that is that is a tattoo, that is a t-shirt right there. And it's so true. And I think so many of us don't think we're as resourced as we are. I think there are opportunities around that, like you said, find a best friend, find someone who can be there and who you can talk with openly and start to melt the shame away. Because I think shame
Yeah.
really flourishes in the dark, right? It really
Yes.
flourishes
Yeah.
when we're alone and we're isolating and we're just spinning in our thoughts. And when we feel connected and resourced in more ways than just money, but also with money, then we can start to melt that shame away. I love your insights there. Thank you. And I know there's some really actionable things that I and also other people can use as well. Can you tell us more about how this money and financial trauma can specifically affect women business owners? I have all genders in my community, but definitely mostly women. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I do think that the way we react to situations and the way we see things is so different. And I want to quickly mention about the note you said on survival. So I love this because in human design, there's something called view, right? It's the lens through
Mhm.
which we look at the world. And I
Mhm.
have noticed that in a lot of my readings, and this makes sense because this is my view as well. There are six different views, so six different lenses through which we look at the world. A lot of people are power view or survival view. And that means that the glasses they wear when they look at the world, I'm survival view personally, are through the lens of survival. What do we need to survive? Do we have it? Do we know where to get it? Like, who's keeping us from it? Whatever. And then people with power view, it's kind of similar. They're like, who has power and who doesn't? And it's
Mm.
very interesting. So if anyone listening, has some strong Scorpio or or those human design elements that I just mentioned, I think, you're very much looking at the world in terms of survival. And you mentioning, that a scarcity mindset actually it's a natural thing as well. It's a reframing, I feel like you offered us there. A reframing of us wanting to survive and thinking that that's not always a bad thing. Obviously, it can turn. There's a spectrum of how we look at survival, through the lens of scarcity, but also ultimately, I think women are very wired to always be scanning, right? Always be scanning for threats, always be thinking about
Well,
survival.
sure. I
So
would say
yeah,
I wouldn't say that we're wired. I would say that it's a result of living under it, like in a cishet white
yeah,
supremacist, capitalist,
yeah.
misogynist world,
Mhm. But it's
right?
also
That
like how our biology works as well, right? Like our brains are more
I would say,
scanning.
given the
Yeah.
epigenetics, that
Hmm.
we understand how trauma is passed down through DNA.
Yeah. Hmm.
And women have been vulnerable to men because society has been misogynist for millennia.
Yes. Yes.
That yes, it's in our DNA because we have always, just like Black folks surviving in a white society, have
Hmm.
to always be aware of what are the white folks doing and what do I have to do to keep safe. And Indigenous folks as well, anybody who's not
Yeah.
white, really. Like
Definitely.
I pass for white, but I'm Jewish, European Jewish, so I look white and I have access to white privilege. But there are still ways in which, as a Jew, I have to be scanning and aware, right?
Yes.
Just like Black folks, just like Indigenous folks,
Yes.
and like women in a world dominated by men. for millennia, all of us, all of the groups that I've mentioned have
Mhm.
had to function other under white supremacy and or patriarchy. And
Definitely.
so it's as much our social conditioning that we have to please and appease, but and also from our millennial, like, I mean, millennia's long survival instincts of having to scan. So I don't want to reduce it to like biological traits of gender that like
Yeah,
if you're
I understand.
born with female biology, I think it
Mhm.
has much more to do with the women, the experience of women, of people in femme and female bodies
Mhm.
and what it's like to live under misogyny and patriarchy
Mhm.
that leads us to that scanning, because scanning again is a survival to
Yeah.
make sure like what's going on in the environment and am I behaving in a way that's going to keep me safe,
Mm, mm.
right?
I appreciate that.
um
Absolutely. Mhm.
and it's very valuable, right? It's very, very valuable. Those of us who know, like, I behave differently among Jews than I do behave among non, in a non, like when I go to
Yep.
when I'm with my congregation, there's a way of being that isn't how we are, and we all, I mean, in the
Code
Black culture, it's called
switching.
code switching. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to steal code switching from you all per se for Jews, but there is this kind of like navigating. So,
So thinking about women in business, how that translates. Yeah.
yes, so there are many systemic barriers that we face. And so like for me, for example, I was a woman, a therapist running a service-based business.
Mhm.
And I thought this is where my thinking affected the success of my business.
Mhm.
Because of the shame and blame around debt, just
Mm.
in general, that exists in society, and the shame and blame around women who are just loose with their money. They're always spending it on bling and makeup and pretty clothes and whatever, right? Which is a
We're
stereotype.
just we're just so
Yeah.
silly, Like so we're
Yeah.
just
We're so spendy and
yeah,
you
we're
can't
so
be
funny.
trusted, and we're always buying the cookie and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So all this stuff came to bear that I was unwilling to take on debt as a lever in my business. I didn't even understand the concept of debt as leverage in a business. I just understood debt is bad and I'm bad for having debt and not paying cash for everything. But what happened is my business, in order to grow, needed leverage.
Mm.
But because of all this stuff, it never even occurred to me that it was possible somehow to leverage things for myself. All I thought is a bank will never give me a loan. And it's true. Many women own small businesses when they go to banks don't get money.
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't ask for help. I didn't think creatively about how else I could fund and leverage my business, right? And so that we got the lift we needed to get into something bigger. And that's part of what led to my mental health crisis that led to me leaving the business. Is if I'd had more money, if I could have leveraged things in the business, I wouldn't have had to carry the whole thing. And we could have made the leap to there's a gap that you have to make when you hit about 100,000 gross. You have to, in order to get up to 150, there's a big gap there that
Mm.
requires a lot of effort and energy. And if I could have leveraged debt, I could have made that leap. And I didn't, I could not see what was there for me.
Mm.
And that's my story as an example of how money trauma and the systemic conditions faced by women who are running mostly service-based businesses, functioning in a world of manufacturing and products, right?
Yep.
And the barriers that we face mean that many of us don't ever reach because we don't know that there's a possibility for us up there. We can't even conceive of it.
Yeah.
Because if we could conceive of that, if I could have conceived that, oh, wait a minute, maybe there is something up there for me, then I could have done some creative thinking and engaged my support to help me get there. But I didn't even know there was a there. I
Mm.
just thought, okay, well, this is as far as I can go. This is it. And
Yeah.
and this is how I have to do things. And it's debilitating and unsustainable and ultimately led to me exiting the business. So our time is limited, but I told the personal story because it's more relatable than the actual theory. But that gives a clear example, I think, of how some of these things come to bear in a business.
Oh, absolutely. No, this makes so much sense. I think so many we really are playing smaller than we could be. And I think the money drama reflects that. I appreciate that
Yeah.
story so much.
And we're
So
playing
yes, we are
smaller because we don't know better.
because we don't
This
yes.
is the other thing. We get blamed for playing small, but
Mhm.
it's because we don't know
Right.
better.
Yeah. And we're not usually taught to do it or say that
A hundred percent.
we're told that we're going to be rewarded and all of these things either.
100%.
Oh my gosh, I wish we had so much more time.
Me too. There's
As
so
a,
much
I
more
know,
to say.
as a closing question, what's you talk about your number one obstacle to healing your relationship with money
That's
and the
shame.
number one strategy to address
Yeah.
that. Yeah, what
Yeah.
kind of takeaway do you want
So
to
the number one obstacle to any of your money stuff is the shame that you feel,
name?
your personal internalized shame about yourself and your own value, but also the social shame around money, how you're conditioned to be shamed. For women, you're shamed whether you save because then you're cheap, or whether you spend because then you're like no good with money, right? So shame is the obstacle. The antidote to shame is connection and belonging and care and love. And it starts like as we mentioned before, shame makes it hard to reach out. But eventually with time and practice, you can learn to reach in
Mm.
first with some kindness and some love to tell yourself there's nothing wrong with me for feeling the way I feel. Whatever it is that I did that I'm feeling shame about was my best attempt to survive the circumstances at hand based on the survival response.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. That's what I would say. That's the antidote, the first step in the antidote to shame,
Mm.
and shame itself is the biggest obstacle.
100%. Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much for speaking those words into our souls. I know that so many of us really needed to hear that and needed to be reminded of this
Yeah.
truth and this wisdom and this connection that is always available to us with each other. So thank you. How can people connect to you if they would like to follow up after today's episode? I'll make
Sure.
sure I put all the links in the show
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Shula.ca, shula.ca, because I'm in Canada. That's my website. Shula.ca/newsletter is where you can subscribe. And this is where, in this newsletter, we have conversations like this
Mhm.
all the time. I don't do a lot of selling in my newsletter. It's the majority of it is supportive content for the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and money psychology. So I would love to see folks subscribe there.
Oh, I'll be subscribing immediately. So thank you. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
people, if they want to find out how to work with you, they can go there as well.
Yes, yes, that's exactly the home for all things Shula is my website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shula, for joining us. This has been fantastic. And to everyone out there, stay connected and really focus on working on your money story. There were so many gems today. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you,
see
Rachel.
you.